Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. Heavily armed American military personnel are transporting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro through the streets of New York. U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who now assumes the role of head of state, emphasizing that if she does not cooperate with the United States, a fate worse than Maduro's awaits her. Similar threats are being issued by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who appears to be one of the primary initiators of the operation conducted by the Americans in Venezuela in recent days. The current situation in Venezuela. Meanwhile, the new female president of Venezuela shows no readiness to cooperate with the United States. Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez, on behalf of the army, has declared a protest regarding what he calls the kidnapping of the Venezuelan president. On the streets of Venezuela, one cannot see protesters supporting the abduction of Nicolas Maduro or expressing support for the opposition, which, as is known, actually won the presidential elections in 2024. Thus, it can be stated that the regime created by Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, continues to control the situation in Venezuela and, consequently, the oil industry of this Latin American country. Trump's dilemma: propaganda versus geopolitics. With every hour following the American special operation, it remains unclear what Donald Trump actually intended to achieve. If the goal was purely a tactical special operation to capture a president who refused to negotiate, then one could speak of success and a developing propaganda effect that pleases Trump. Regarding real geopolitical results, we see nothing yet that indicates a change of power in Venezuela. The regime that ruled under Chavez and Maduro remains in power and shows no desire to change its policy or cooperate with the U.S. The cost of real change. Real cooperation could be achieved, but it would require a serious ground operation involving the American military, not just special forces. Such an approach contradicts Donald Trump's own political philosophy. He is ready to threaten and conduct short, specific operations, like strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities or Maduro's residence, but he does not appear to be a leader ready to start a major war with high casualties among American servicemen. If he were to do so, he would become a different Trump, distant from his traditional electorate. The supporters of isolationist America voted for him hoping to minimize U.S. involvement in global conflicts. Trump even boasts to his voters about refusing financial and military aid to Ukraine, claiming America is no longer spending a single dollar on victims of Russian aggression. In the case of a war with Venezuela, it would cost not only a vast amount of dollars but also American lives, creating a serious conflict between Trump and his base. The nature of the Venezuelan regime. Trump may have calculated that Venezuelan leaders would simply be frightened by how skillfully American special forces can capture a head of state. However, it is important to remember that this is an ideological regime, people who came to power on populist, left-wing slogans. For them, cooperating with the U.S. would mean the collapse of their ideological foundation and the loss of support from those who still adhere to Chavismo. For these leaders, betraying their patrons in Moscow and Beijing would mean losing power much sooner than if they continued their anti-imperialist rhetoric. Conclusion. Donald Trump now faces a difficult choice. Acknowledge that the U.S. cannot establish real control over Venezuela without a real war of uncertain duration and outcome, a scenario Trump himself criticized regarding Iraq. Accept that the capture of Maduro, while leaving his associates in power, will be viewed as just another propaganda campaign without real results. This does not strengthen the U.S. position in Latin America, rather, it demonstrates that Trump cannot achieve new geopolitical successes because he fears real war with authoritarian regimes. He fears a real confrontation with Putin's Russia, which successfully blackmails him with nuclear potential, and is forced to scale back tariffs against China. The uncertainty currently prevailing in the world reflects the dilemma Trump faces every time he must choose between a real war and the propaganda effect of a special operation.